Things we use every day. It's hard to imagine our lives without the technology of today. But what was life like 1,000 years ago? There are many things that were extremely useful just one millennium ago that have either been forgotten or replaced by modern conveniences. Here are some everyday technologies that people used 1,000 years ago, but don't anymore. Candle extinguisher. Candles are an invention attributed to accidental discovery in ancient China around 200 BC. They may have been used initially for religious ceremonies, but quickly became a common source of light in homes and businesses. For centuries, candles were made from animal fats and beeswax, and while they were useful, they weren't very efficient. Many early candle extinguishers were created simply to prevent wasted wax. The most popular type was called a candle snuffer, which consisted of a long handle with a metal cap at the end. This would be plunged into the candle flame to snuff it out. There was even a decorative element to these designs. Some candle snuffers were considered quite artistic and were seen as status symbols for the wealthy. But when oil lamps and then electric lights came along, the candle snuffer fell out of style. With electric lights, there is no need to extinguish candles. In fact, most people don't even use candles for light at all anymore. Instead, they're often used for scent, or as part of a romantic dinner, or for emergencies. The bow drill. Drilling holes into wood isn't easy, and in the pre-industrial days there were several methods to achieve this. But the bow drill was the most common tool used for drilling holes through wood. This simple device consists of a length of wood or metal with a notch cut out of one side. A rope or cord is attached to one end, and a spindle is placed into the notch and rotated. The other end of the rope is then tied to a bow. When the bow is drawn back and released, the spindle begins to rotate rapidly. This makes a small divot into the wood, and as the drill is slowly moved forward, a hole is formed. Over time, the friction generates enough heat to burn the wood and char the hole even further. The bow drill was used all over the world for thousands of years before being phased out by powered drills and other mechanical methods of woodworking. Today, the bow drill is still taught as a survival skill and can be used to make basic tools such as fishing rods. A butter stick. While the modern-day microwave oven has certainly changed how we prepare food, up until the mid-20th century, butter was commonly cooked using a butter stick. This was a long metal rod with a handle on one end and a flat surface on the other. The flat end was inserted into butter to melt it, and the handle could then be turned to mix the butter evenly. A butter stick is still sometimes used in baking today, although this task is usually accomplished with a simple fork. Before microwaves, cooking butter was essential to making pastry dough because it needed to be thoroughly mixed with the flour. Otherwise, the dough wouldn't hold together properly. A butter stick also had uses outside of baking. Because it could melt butter more quickly than a stove, it could also be used for frying pans. These days, butter sticks are largely a novelty item, although they do have some commercial applications. They are still used in high-end restaurants where chefs require precise amounts of melted butter. The carpet sweeper. Vacuum cleaners are relatively new inventions. Up until around 1900, there were no convenient ways to clean carpets and rugs without a lot of effort. Sweeping was done with a broom, but it was difficult to remove all dirt and debris with a brush. This led to the invention of the carpet sweeper, which was patented in 1860. It consisted of a large rotating brush that could sweep across carpets and collect dust and debris. These were hand-operated devices that consisted of two connected wheels and a brush that extended from between them. One person would walk behind the brush, sweeping it across the rug as the operator pushed the sweeper in front of them. The carpet sweeper quickly became popular in American households, but eventually it was overshadowed by the vacuum cleaner. Once electricity was available in most homes, manufacturers began making electric versions of the sweeper. But the vacuum was already on the market and proved to be much more popular. Today, the carpet sweeper is almost unknown. Hand crank music box. Before digital music players, people carried around hand crank music boxes to listen to their favorite tunes. These were small boxes with a handle on top and a selection of tunes that could be cranked out by turning the handle. The mechanism inside consisted of a series of pins that dropped down onto a cylinder that had been covered in musical notes. Each note was assigned a letter, and combinations of letters spelled out different tunes. When the pin would drop onto a note, it would vibrate a tuned piece of metal which produced the sound. Hand crank music boxes were invented in Germany in the 1700s and were popular for decades. But by the late 1800s, they were eclipsed by newer technologies. Eventually, phonographs, radios, and then cassette players took over. Today, the only place you might hear hand-cranked music is from a souvenir shop in an amusement park. Lantern. Lanterns have been used throughout history to provide light in dark places. Originally, lanterns were nothing more than containers that held burning materials such as candles, oil lamps, or even fire. However, over the years, lanterns have become increasingly sophisticated. The most common type of lantern used in everyday life today is probably the flashlight. Flashlights consist of a battery-powered bulb that can be turned on and off by a switch. They are portable and come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. Another type of lantern used today is the LED lantern. LED lanterns are becoming more and more popular because they are energy efficient and last longer than traditional incandescent light bulbs. They are also often cheaper than other types of lighting. However, these are modern variations on an ancient design. The earliest lanterns consisted of a container made from stone or clay that would house a burning oil lamp. Lanterns continued to evolve over the years, and during the Middle Ages they were often used for street lighting or as a source of light in homes and businesses. Lanterns are still used today in many parts of the world, especially in areas where electricity is not available. They are also popular among campers and hikers because they are lightweight and portable. The monocle. A monocle is a single eyepiece telescope used to aid vision. It consists of a lens mounted in a frame that can be held in one hand or attached to a headband. Originally, monoculars were used for astronomy, but they quickly found uses in other fields. Soldiers used them to observe enemy positions from afar, and sportsmen used them to get a closer look at their prey. During the Victorian era, they were popular among gentlemen who wanted to appear stylish and sophisticated. Even fictional characters such as Sherlock Holmes were often depicted wearing a monocle. However, by the early 20th century, they had gone out of style. The major reason for this was that they were cumbersome and awkward to use. Wearing a monocle meant that the user couldn't see anything except through the lens, and this made it difficult to perform everyday tasks such as walking or talking. The advent of eyeglasses also contributed to the decline of the monocle, since glasses were much more convenient to wear. Monoculars did see some use in World War I, but after that, they once again faded from public view. Today, monoculars are mostly used by bird watchers or hunters who need a closer look at their subject. Soda siphon. If you've ever been to a restaurant, you've probably seen a soda fountain. These machines dispense soda water and syrup to create fizzy drinks. But before automatic soda fountains were invented, people used a device known as a soda siphon to make carbonated beverages at home. These were cylindrical devices that could be attached to a standard glass bottle. The soda siphon worked by forcing carbon dioxide gas into the bottle, which would create pressure and force the liquid to spray out of a nozzle. People could then add flavoring to the soda water to create their own soft drink. Soda siphons were invented in the mid-1800s and were popular until the early 1900s. At this point, they were replaced by more convenient methods of producing carbonated beverages. Soda siphons are still sometimes used by hobbyists to carbonate their own homemade soda. Telephone switchboard. The telephone was invented in 1876, and by the turn of the century, they were being used in homes and businesses across the country. But in the early days, telephones were operated manually using a switchboard. Switchboards were used to connect calls between different lines. When someone would pick up a telephone, they would be connected to an operator, who would then connect them to the person they were trying to call. This required a lot of manpower, and the switchboards were constantly busy. Eventually, the switchboard was replaced by the automatic telephone exchange, which allowed calls to be made directly without an operator. This innovation led to the widespread adoption of the telephone and helped to make it the ubiquitous device that it is today. Typewriter. The typewriter was invented in the early 1800s and quickly became an indispensable tool for writers, typists, and businesses. It allowed people to produce high-quality written documents much more quickly than they could by hand. The typewriter also opened up new opportunities for women in the workforce, since they were often employed as typists. Eventually, the typewriter was replaced by the personal computer, which was more versatile and could also be used for tasks other than typing. Today, typewriters are largely a thing of the past and have been relegated to museums or antique shops. But they remain an iconic symbol of the pre-computer age. What everyday items do you think will become obsolete in the next 100 years? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and come back soon for more videos.